Okay, so I can see the participants are starting to join us. Welcome everyone to Conversations with Christina. This is our deep dive on love conversation. I'm very excited tonight to have Susan Fluick and Colette Freeman here.
Hello. Hi, guys. This is awesome.
I know, I love these conversations with you. They're always so heart-filling.
Yeah,
And so
definitely.
those of you who are joining us tonight on the webinar, just want a few things to explain the platform to you. So you can see at the bottom of your screen, you have a couple buttons that are going to be really important for you tonight. One of those is the Q&A button. So if you have any questions that you would love for us to answer, and we want to answer your questions because this is interactive and are synergistic, and we're going to go all over the place and wherever that we are guided. So we love to have your questions. You're also going to notice the chat button there. And so if you have a comment, if you want to just chime in with a comment, and just a note to make sure that when you do chat, if you want to send something just to us, to click all panelists. And if you want to send something to everyone, and we all love to hear what you all have to say, then click all panelists and attendees. So welcome everyone, and welcome those who are joining us on Facebook tonight. We just love having you all here, and YouTube later on as well. So before we dive in, just a quick introduction. So my name is Christina Bianchini. I'm a registered professional counselor, a relationship therapist, and I really focus on helping people to connect to themselves and to connect to other people. I do think that is one of our greatest challenges and triumphs of being human, are those two things. And I'm joined tonight by Colette Freeman. So Colette is a wonderful, dear soul, a friend, and an angel therapy practitioner, and the owner of Enjoy Studio and Boutique, which is now open again.
We're open.
Yes. And what I love about it is they're doing social distancing and recommending everybody's angel wing span apart. And I just that's like my favorite thing that I read.
Yeah, that's pretty great, right?
Yes. We get to own our angel wings. How cool is
that? Yes, you'll be aware of them when you come in. You'll know you have them.
Yeah. Awesome.
So glad you're here again today, Colette. Just love what you add to our conversations here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And we also have Susan Fluick, who again is a dear friend, really the conduit of truth. Like, I just love what comes through her and from her. She has really used her life as her own path as to teach the world, and for that I am deeply grateful. And she's an energy and healing practitioner, and so welcome, Susan, so much to this call tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate that. And I always learn every time we do these calls. I learn so much about myself in preparatory work for these events, and then also just when people that sit on the calls as well, the energy of it is really helping to drive my experience forward and also provide insight for others.
I totally agree. Like, what happens here is a creation, and it's not just what the three of us create, it's what the collective is creating. And I do also learn something from each of them, and I'll watch each of them again after, and I'm like, oh, that was really good. Like, and I get something out of it. Yeah. Sometimes even stuff that comes out of my own mouth, I'm like, well, that was pretty good. I was surprised I said that. Yeah. And it's all helpful, and it's all learning.
Yes. Super 100%. Enjoyable.
So tonight is a deep dive into love. And after our last conversation together, there were a lot of questions about love and codependency and how do we show up in the world? How do we love ourselves more? We've really touched a lot on that. And so we wanted to continue that conversation. And, it's my experience that most of us want to experience more love. We want more love in our lives. And yet most of us are also not fully open and not fully open-hearted to the love experience quite yet. So I wanted to start tonight seeing if we can attempt to identify or define what is love. What is love? Because I do think that's one thing that's very difficult to define. So, Susan, when you think about what love is, what comes into your awareness?
Well, even in preparatory for this conversation, you posed the question, and right away I was saying, my head wanted to give this whole definition and give it terms and what the heck okay, I got to come up with something grand in terms of the label. And it has nothing to do with the label. It's an experience. And I, you know, internally recognizing, and my intuition right away said expanded presence. And then it went even further to say expanded presence through vulnerability. And it's being able to show up, and it's being able to show up and be who you are and have the expression of that play out with the other, whoever the other is. It could be in, you know, in relationships and work settings, however. It's being able to show up and recognize the opportunity for the evolution of oneself. It's all, more than I think about it, it is all love.
It is all
love. Is just the expression. It's all love. All of what we perceive as good and bad, it's just the experience, the expression of experience.
The expression.
And having the awareness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I really believe the more that the universe shows me, gives me a wider perspective, I'm going to put it that way, that I recognize it really is all love. All of the experiences is showing up in the evolution of oneself. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Showing up as oneself.
Yeah.
There's 3 key things that I wrote down.
I know, I realized as I did that, I went down three categories.
I think that was great. I think that's awesome because there were 3 key pieces. I mean, I think it's so there are lots of elements, right? Like, I don't think it is just love is not just one thing. And so you said you start off by saying it's expanded awareness and then added
expanded presence and presence.
Right? And then the expression of experience and really showing up as oneself. Like love is everything.
Yes. And I'm seeing it more and more everything. Like even I'm observing my experience on a moment by moment basis. And in the last 3 weeks, all different events have come up, what we would perceive as really trying or extremely discomforting, lots of emotions. And when I exist in the present moment and say, what is being shown to me? Makes me want to cry right now, actually. What is being shown to me, or how is this showing up for me? And knowing that the universe is always working for me, it has to be all love. It has to be. And even I'm doing the Course in Miracles right now, and I shared this with you guys. And one of the ideas, and I think it's day 67, I could be wrong on the day, but basically it says that love created me like itself. So how can, if that is love, is the essence of the universe, love created me like itself, it's all love. There's nothing that isn't love.
True.
And if we and even if we just sit in that for a second, just if the callers and people sitting here, just to close their eyes for just a minute and just feel what I just said there. And just take it through the breath that love created me like itself. Love created me like itself. I don't know about you guys, but I can feel the expandedness in the heart. It just goes into deep expansion. So the expanding presence, being in the present moment, it is just being in the presence of it. It is us. Nothing that isn't us in that regard.
Cool. Thank you for that.
I can feel that, definitely feel that in my heart.
Mhm.
And the mind does something different for sure, right?
Yes.
Trying to figure it out, but I feel
Mhm.
that. It's very comforting, very compassionate, very in the moment.
Mhm.
That's beautiful, Susan. Thank
Is there
you.
something that you wanted to add to that, Colette?
Yeah, when I'm really feeling, I agree. So I agree. It's an experience. It's an experience that I guess that we go through as we're growing up. Have moments of feeling love. The moment that we see or hold a puppy, right, or a little kitty or a little something, there's a feeling there. I feel it. If I want to bring it on, I do the drop into my heart and open my heart space, feeling, knowing, appreciation always brings it, right? I don't know about you ladies, but it's like the moment I'm feeling a gratitude or an appreciation, I feel an expansion, right? So there's a direct connection to love with that for me. And I love what you said, Susan, right? I wrote it down, right? Because it's the evolution of oneself, that there's love there. So that even if it's a difficult moment, it's still love. It's still for us. I really love identifying that and I definitely have identified that, but to meditate on that, to be present with that. Again, we're back to that same thing that we've talked about before, where it's like, it's difficult, but for sure it's happening for me. And so where is this so loving for me? Where is life just provided this? Where is this? And that the ego can't answer that question.
No.
Right? My
No.
self-image is not going to answer that question, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Colette, love is a feeling. It is a feeling for me. I know that is it's almost like a nothing space where the mind is not active in that space. It is just a complete feeling, like if I was to describe it, maybe a warmth and a joy. And you're right, like doing things like opening your heart space and focusing on, like, I think about the heart math quick coherence method, right? Put my hand on my heart, slow my breath, and focus on something that I appreciate or I'm grateful for. Sometimes I'll just imagine myself standing outside and the sun beating on my face and how that feels. So I'm wondering if maybe we all take a moment, us and the people on this call tonight, to just drop into that space. So hand on your heart. This brings the awareness to the heart space. Slowing the breath. Maybe 5 count in and a 5 count out. Then bringing up something that you feel deep gratitude or appreciation for. And noticing what's going on in your body, how it feels. You notice most of us have a little smile on our face. So just want to encourage, like, this is what it feels like when my heart is open. Like, things can slow down. I'm not in a rush for anything in this place. It's almost like I'm in this flow. It feels good, like it's warm, like warm. My friend says like warm chocolate or something. Like I'm just swimming in this like lovely stream of light. And so just notice as we're on this call this evening, if your heart starts to feel closed or constricted, just stop for a moment and come back to this place. It's always available to you. Because that's what love is. It's always available to us. It's a matter of just tapping into the stream that's already there.
Yeah, it reminds me when you were speaking earlier, when you have, when you're in new love, when you have a new relationship, and it feels everything just drops into the present moment. And time just goes on. You think of nothing else but that feeling, the expanded feeling of the heart, and you look at the other and the expression of self, and it's just exactly what you just described, the expandedness of one's heart. You can't escape it because you just live in the present moment. You're not thinking of the past, and you're not thinking what's coming in the future. You just want to be with the other. In that moment, and it creates such a beautiful sensation physically, but also on a deeper level, because you're really in the experience of love in that moment.
And you know what's interesting is I think when there was a time when I used to think that that initial falling in love was really about lust and that it wasn't real. And then what I've actually come to learn is that that is a real expression of love. And sometimes the truer expression of love before the conditioned mind and all of our programming starts coming in.
Absolutely.
That's actually there. Yeah. So, reading books like Awakened Relating by Lynn Marie Lumiere, which I can post later. And also Bruce Lipton and the Honeymoon Effect. It really talks about that. And if we can stay in that place, because what we often think of as this person loves me or I'm getting love from someone else is really just us showing up, and that the love exists within us. It's when we put up a block to love that shifts.
And who's to say the experience, even when it comes to the conditioning after the first, what we would normally deem as the infatuation stage, which I also agree with you. It really is the true definition of what the soul to soul, you're really seeing the truth of each other in the beginning. Then the conditioned self starts to show up.
Exactly.
But that is also deeply loving because it's showing you where you're in opposition with self.
Oh, I love that. And there's the great teaching, eh?
Through the other.
Through the other.
How more loving is that?
That's beautiful, Susan. Absolutely.
Can you say that again? That shows us where we're in opposition to self.
Yeah. And again, I have to tell you, as you know, the channeling comes and I even surprise myself. I'm like, oh my God, that was pretty cool. That was good. No, but it is, what I do know is everyone jokes that is around me for any time. I'm always referencing the mirror.
Yeah.
So now, at the beginning of a relationship, we get to experience the essence of love through the other, as we talked about. Then when the conditioned self starts to show up within each other, you get to have that observation to see oneself, what's holding you back. And I'm going to call them the boundaries, or the, the boundaries isn't the right word, the reflections that are showing up that are really keeping you in separation of what your true divineness is. It's almost like it's designed. The universe wants you to see initially who you really are when you meet the other. To see the spirit, the essence of who you are. You cannot escape it. You're madly in love with the other. And then it does the beautiful task to show you the conditioning of the other, yourself through the other. So you can fall more even deeper in love with self, because there's the shadow aspects and there's also the angelic aspects. It's the yin and yang. It's being in balance of both. It is all love.
Can you write a children's book on this, please? We need to know this from the beginning.
Can you imagine?
Get all caught up, right?
Can you imagine what what the world would be if people knew? And also to look at the conditioned self to the other. It makes me want to cry again. I don't know. I'm really emotional, as you guys know, the last few days.
It's welcomed. Welcomed.
It is so important that we allow ourselves. It is all love.
Yeah.
It is all love. And the friendly soul who's our partner that's agreed to show us these conditioned aspects or the judgments that we don't want to see in ourselves or how we show up. And if we can just hold it with love, it's all just love. It's all the experience of love.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
was just going to, yeah, because I wanted to add that the piece of us, and Robert Holden, I believe he talks about it in this book, that our fear is that we're not lovable. And the moment the other comes back with anything at all, we're bouncing it off that place. Right? It's like, oh, I'm not lovable. And then defense comes up and all the things that come along with it. But if we can have that awareness at a young age to go, oh, this is a place now. What do I do with this? I bring up my own love. I bring up my worthiness. I bring up love, period. The presence of love, as you said, Christina, it's everywhere. It's always. And that, you know what, we were talking about this card today. We were just sharing, I am worthy of my own love and not waiting it from the other. Right? So that's the moment, because we're always going to be showing that, right? It's going to pop up here, there, and everywhere. The challenge, am I lovable? Am I lovable? We have to answer that question with a yes.
Hopefully.
A resounding yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think am I lovable, or thinking I am not lovable, is a thought. It is not reality. It's a thought that we create as a result of not receiving the care, love, and attention and safety that we expect. So Dan Siegel, he's written many books, and he talks about the child brain has something called experience expected growth. So as a child, we expect to be loved in order to continue to grow. I almost think of it like a flower, like blossoming and blooming. So we expect certain things to fertilize that opening. And when it doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen for most of us, because most of our parents are wounded. They have their own stories, and they also, we need to write books for them and for you know what I mean? We need to go back way in history and deliver these books, right?
Yeah, maybe we can do it.
Yeah. So when we something doesn't happen that we expect, that is loving from our parents, as a child, we don't have the ability in the higher level thinking to go, oh, that's just my mom stressed about money. Or that's just my dad, having a hard day at work. When we walk in and we see the scowl on their face, we think, oh, I've done something wrong. It becomes, and children are very narcissistic, right? We think everything is about us. That's just how it works, okay? So we think, I must have done something wrong. I am not lovable. Because if I was, they would be exactly who I needed them to be. And so it's a false story that we create at a very young age. And then we adapt ourselves in some way, right? Where maybe we then become people pleasers. Who do I need to become to get that scowl or that sadness off of mom or dad's face?
Yeah.
And then we change who we are. And we think then our definition of love and what it means to be loving and who we are and our personalities actually shift, right? We think I need to be a high achiever in order, to get love. I think maybe I need to be a perfect little girl or little boy in order to be loved. Maybe, or love is dangerous and I need to avoid love at all costs. Like, these things happen very young. We have to understand, though, that most time we have gotten it wrong. I would like to tell you all the time you have gotten that wrong. And that greatly impacts how much we're willing to open our hearts as we get older.
Yeah, and I believe love is inherent. Love is who we are. It is who we are. We're individual expressions of love. We are that. We're never separate from it, but we have the perceptions that we are not that. And love is out there and we're here.
Yeah.
When in fact, we are it. You showed up in the world as it.
Yeah. That's what we need to share. That's what we, cultivate
And the
that
journey,
young.
Yeah, and what you said, Christina, with all of us. I was talking to a friend today, and as you said, most people did not have their needs met. We didn't learn that this expression of love is inherent in our being. We got the perception, the conditioning that we're not lovable and we're somehow separate from love. And the only journey, I was saying to my friend, that we have a journey, no one is going to do it for us. The journey is within. And that card, do you mind holding that up again, Colette? That card? I am worthy of my own love. If we all just start there and just take that in, I am worthy of my own love. It means nobody else. It does not matter. It wouldn't matter if Christina, if you called me the biggest bitch in the world and Colette said I was the most beautiful spirit in the world. In my own love, neither would matter, because I know it's inherent of who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, further in the upbringing piece, just as a child who is raised in a religion, a Catholic, right? And I know we've talked about this before, but even that now, it became God was that, right? God was the judge, and I had to please God. And if I didn't do that, so the ultimate, not just my parents, and maybe even if I could grow up and figure out my parents weren't perfect, but God, who I thought was supposed to be perfect, now actually has some really big demands on me, right? And that was, whoa, because the one thing that I was taught was love was now, in my mind, a man on a cloud. It's very, very much so, Susan.
And it's also conditional.
Very conditional.
Love is conditional. That's the biggest bogus story of it all. There is no love is love. Everything else is an illusion. The only truth is love. That's it. Everything else is a storyline. And we've been fed the story. Can you imagine a God that would say, if love is love, and that's what we're made of, that we would be judged, even if the most horrendous sins in the world, love is love. You would be embraced in the arms of God, and you beautiful, you didn't see your love. That's it. And it would just hold you and cuddle you and kiss you and tell you how beautiful you are in love. It would never be, oh, you're bound to hell because you did this.
And that's not what life is, not what source is, right? But it is certainly the way religion and man, right, wanted to control. And so that was really highly effective. It's highly effective in parenting to not, and I don't mean highly effective in raising a really well
rounded person.
But, you know, to get, because we're all seeking that, right? Love, appreciation, and approval. And we can jump a lot of hoops for that and then continue to. And, you know, I have 3 daughters, and one of the things that I was very aware of raising them, and this doesn't make it perfect because it still happens because we're still doing this human condition. But I always remember, I really want them to trust this inner place. This is the one thing, right? I don't want to be the parent that just tells them what to do, because then they're just always going to look for someone to tell them what to do, right? It's you just go from one authority to another, to another, to another. I wanted them to feel it in here. Like, well, how do you feel? What does it feel like for you? Do you want to move towards it or away from it? Trust that. That's really it. For me, it was a difficult thing to teach with even the whole system involved, right? So we have the school system, we have teachers' authority there, we have doctors, we have all the things that in my generation of being raised, we just paid attention, listened, and didn't ask questions. So there's a lot of conditioning there. And I really believe that is the gift that we can give our children and each other, is to keep bringing them back to themselves. How does it feel inside you? You're the authority on you. And that's and as they move forward then and move into older, you know, I'm 12, I'm 13, I'm 14, and now I'm hanging out with, right? We got places to go and things to do. I know I can check here. And that's what that was always my wish, that they would be able to check here and not be listening, asking for the approval of their buddies and their, you know, all, because that's what we're trained to do. right?
Mhm.
And so that place is really loving. And that place is very intuitive. And that's just, and I think that's as an adult and that's probably my what I've been seeking my whole life to hold on to.
And that is self-love. That is self-love.
That is self-love.
Knowing thyself, going within and listening to your own experience.
Yeah.
What better way to walk in the world?
Right.
That's where love starts. And what kudos to you to step outside the norm of reality, and instead of being raised by a bunch of behaviorists,
Right.
that if you do this, then I'll love you. If you don't do this, then I'm gonna contract my love, gonna take it away from you.
Yeah.
That you let them be in charge of their own experience. And the term I always use is sovereignty, power and authority over self.
Yeah.
And so you're giving them that space to exist from. How amazing is that?
It was, I'll tell you too, it was way easier. It was, in my experience, that was way easier because I didn't have to come up with all the answers. I didn't have to always know, right? I just like, how does that feel? What if they were in a dispute with someone, right? Well, what's your guidance tell you? What's your feeling? What do you feel? And that, I mean, that's so important. And obviously, I'm sharing it and teaching it because I was learning it at the same time, right? Because I was raised completely different to that, right? When my mom said, respect yourself, I didn't know what that meant. You know, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. I'm supposed to listen to people. I'm supposed to listen to you and the doctor and my teachers and that, right? How do I don't understand. What am I supposed to do? Yeah. So it's cultivating. So that is the love piece. And I would just like, as we continue to do that for our children, to teach them, like, please go within. You know, can we add that to your book that you're writing, Susan? Did I tell you you're writing a book?
Yes, that is a big piece of it, to know thyself. Nobody knows. Know thyself. Nobody can, and I say this, nobody can tell me my experience. And it is, I love what you're saying, Colette, that is just so critical. Self-love. When you have love for self, then it naturally extends to other. And experiences draw back in a loving way. When you don't love self, again, you get those experiences that resonate with where you are.
Right.
Yeah, we had a comment from someone who said that, you know, they were never taught to do that when they were young, right? To love themselves. And I think one of the things that you said, Colette, that was so profound in there is like, I was learning this for myself, so I was able to teach to my daughters.
Yeah, it was happening at the same time almost. I might have been just a 1 wee step ahead, and sometimes not even, right? Not even, because I was feeling it out, but I had this feeling that it was wrong. I don't know if you ever got told, you know, when you were going to school, did your parents ever say to you, it's your job, I have to go do my job and it's your job to go to school?
I've said that to Alexander. Yeah.
Oh, you said that to Well, I would be going like, what? Okay, I had I couldn't say it to my kids. It couldn't come out of my mouth. And while we were still in that place of how we were going to handle it, I would send Doug, you go tell him, because I don't believe it. You know what I mean? And so, and obviously things are changing, and don't get me wrong, I think everybody's experience is unique of what is right for them. But I definitely, in trusting myself, and it was just you're winging it, but there is something inside that's always speaking, right? And if we were able to express that, you know, I can remember one time, my oldest daughter, there was a little girl in the neighborhood wanted to babysit, and my oldest daughter was just 2 at the time. So I think I was pregnant with my second, and she wouldn't go near her. She wouldn't go near her, right? And the girl was saying all the words, but my daughter wouldn't go near her. And I was like, and I was new, you know, I was still a new mom, and I was still working out the authority thing. I didn't know. But I think love speaks, like, that's really what's speaking through our intuition. Love is speaking through that all the time. And it's the higher vision, the higher version, the higher feeling. Or, like you said, when we were just doing that heart piece, the calmer, the more in the moment. It's not going to be racy. It's not going to be fearful. The opposite of that. Right? And anything other than that, when I was running other stories, it would be, yeah, but what if, what do they say? What will happen? Complete fear and right. Analyzing it and not staying in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, the heart doesn't lie.
Mm-hmm.
No.
One of the things that Melanie just commented on, she says sometimes she says that her kids are ahead of her. And I think that sometimes they really are, because I consider kids closer to love. They're closer to their divine essence. They haven't had as much conditioning yet. And so they are living just through the senses.
Just through experience.
Right?
Alexander, I'm telling you, some of the stuff that comes out of that kid's mouth, I'm like, he's not conditioned to the extent that we are, and he just knows it, and the information comes just from love. There's no conditioning around it. He's not so embedded in the personality and the fear that we've all had anointed upon us. Let's put it that way.
And I know Melanie, beautiful Melanie, hello, and your children, wow. Like, wow. And it's so true. They're helping us undo our conditioning because we love them so much, right? So when we have that child in front of us and we want this great thing for them. And so it's a challenge when they're coming up with, I don't feel good. And I'm coming up with, yeah, but you better, you're supposed to, I think my mom said, you know?
Yeah.
And so to stay present with them. And Melanie, you do a beautiful job of that. I want to say that. Her children are exquisite, and she is too.
She's doing a good job. So we had a question a little bit ago that we've kind of just been keep going through. So Crystal Connors wants to know, what about toxic love? What can be done about that? Well, I think first of all, I don't think that that's actually such a thing as toxic love. I don't think you can put those two words together. So if it doesn't feel like love, it's not love. So toxic, like what I find is that what people do in the name of love, trying to get love, trying to seek love, trying to control to get love from a place of fear, does not actually feel loving. I think that is what is toxic. That's not actually love. That is fear. That is fueling that. And sometimes I have my clients go through and I say, okay, what is your definition of love? What's your template for love? And so they often have things like, well, love was conditional, right? Love was if I was a good girl. Love was withholding. Love was never talking about what was actually happening so we didn't upset each other. So there's this definition of love that we have consciously or unconsciously, these overt and covert rules about what love is that we all have to unpack to create our own type of what is love for us, right? Go within, ask here. If it doesn't feel good, it ain't love. I promise you that, right? Well, okay, hold on one second. I'm going to backtrack. There are times like pure expressions of like feeling my feelings, like sadness and sorrow. But if someone is doing something to me that is asking me to be a different human, or, so maybe someone could expand on what they mean by toxic love, but something that is loving is something that is caring. It is responsive to you. It makes you feel seen, makes you feel safe. It makes you feel soothed in their presence. Right? You are the world in that moment. That is what love is all about. That is that space. So, we're asked, is toxic love conditional love? I don't know or is conditional love toxic? I would say, yes, that's asking, like, we're, giving to get, or whatever that is. It's very conditional, right? Like it's creating, I talked about earlier about a bandwidth of love. Like we all have that. And most of us have a very narrow bandwidth, right? This is the most we're willing to be vulnerable and willing to open our heart and risk. And this is the least amount that we're willing to risk. And the most we're willing to be uncomfortable. And that is where that controlling and conditional love comes in. We're not willing to be discomfort in ourselves. So we try to control the people around us.
It's funny when you're saying that. two things were coming into my mind. One,
Yeah.
there's the expression of love, which you just talked about.
Yes.
And it's supposed to feel good. It's the expandedness of the heart, which we spoke about, and it feels really good. There is also, if the universe is always working for us, it is always loving. So I want to touch on that just for a second. So if you are the individual who is experiencing what she perceives to be toxic love, or even conditional love, which is by the other, another participant that talked about conditional love. If that's showing up in our awareness, in our experience, it's an opportunity to move into love. Because it's showing you some part about yourself that you're not maybe seeing, or to help you bridge through a pattern, a repatterning of an experience or a wound that you may have seen in your past. And usually this stuff is linked to childhood. So in the expression of love, and I want to talk about the universe here, we're all love. In the expression of love, back to what we said at the beginning of the call, the universe is giving us an opportunity. The term you used is to unpack. And to look, if something is showing up toxic in my relationship, what is it saying about me? Not saying that you're toxic either. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, where is it something that I need to look at? Do I have a belief that all love is toxic? And you know, having experiences and being able to see that as they show up, it never has anything to do with the other. It is always to help us to move deeper into our truth of true love, the expression of what it is, the divine love that we all are.
I'm glad you said that, Susan, because that was when Christine, because when you were talking, I was thinking, so like, how do we move through that? So we're on our own, we're in this situation, it feels toxic. What can I do now? What can I do now to change my experience right here? It's me and another person, and this is feeling like that. And that's the next piece, is to come within and grow this love within, to bring more awareness to it, to show up for yourself, to be the love, to really, truly, right? Be the love, know you're worthy. And so when we're saying we're worthy of love, I'm thinking to myself, it's always meant to me in the past, worthy of someone else to love me, you know, always waiting for that. I'm waiting for someone else to love me. Well, for goodness sakes, right? What if I just did it? Wouldn't that be something? Right? And then we know, those of us who have been practicing, and I think everybody here has probably been practicing somewhat to try to find a place where it's like, how do I love myself through this, in this moment, and then if we get a little bit of that, if that grows just a little bit, we have a changed experience, even a small moment of a changed experience to build on. Right? Yeah.
And it's consistently choosing love and so if I was in that moment, so something happens, let's say somebody is snarky with me or calls me a name or is short with me. So the first thing that I do is I drop into loving myself. Okay, this other person's actions have nothing to do with my value. I am loved.
I love that. I love every time you say that. I just
first thing. Okay. This is their experience. They're the tornado. Okay. And I'm just going to be there and just love myself, because when I can come from there, then I can then respond from love and see past that which appears, right? I can set a boundary about, hey, like, what's going on here? Right? It's not okay to speak to me that way. And what's going on? Like, I can enter with compassion, because again, it's not about you're the bad guy, because that's not love. It's a matter of seeing that wounded person in front of me, not taking it on, not allowing it, but stepping in with compassion and curiosity.
Yeah.
And what I know is, if I can do that, it's kind of like, you know, someone's puffed themselves up, right? Like they're full of air and they're coming in hot, right? And the minute I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? It's like all the wind goes out of the sails. And like, there's just this softening, because all they're wanting is love too. And they probably don't know how to ask for it. Like, it's almost like I see like a child having this tantrum, right? And like, again, while the behavior's not okay, the first thing I can do is just connect with them and say, oh, you are hurting. You are hurting here. What is happening for you?
Yeah. And they just want, I think we want to be heard and seen. And I'm learning more and more that all relationships are holy. Like every expression that shows up, it's an opportunity of truth to reveal itself, or love to reveal itself in the moment. And I love what you said, Christina, when we could come in and meet the person at their anger, and how dare you talk to me that way? And, and then you could see the escalation of it going in a lower vibration. There's the potentiality of that experience playing out. And I often use the term, what would love do in this moment?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I say. What would love do here? And I get triggered all the time. For some reason, it went in checkout lines that the checkout ladies are really slow. I don't know why, but I get quite triggered there. And so I have to just sit there. Okay, what would love do? It's an opportunity to practice patience.
Nice.
And just be in the moment. I know I created this experience for me. It's all about me. And so when you just diffuse the situation from love and said to the person, or the example that you gave, what's going on? Just, you can just, even us saying that, can you feel the energy of that? You can just feel the energy.
I can.
How it just goes calm.
Yeah.
And just to hold space in love. It shifts the energy. And it's a visceral feeling. It's not
beautiful.
like we're making this shit up either. The shift or the experience that you're with.
Whatever you made up, we didn't actually hear for a second. It cut out.
Okay.
Not meant to hear it.
That's so funny.
That is cute.
Yeah. So that is, that just sounds so lovely. And we have moments of that, right? I want to ask, okay, I'm just trying to think, how did you get there? Practice? How did you get there, Christina? Like thinking, because you're so good at that, right? You arrive there, you're present, what's going on, because you're very self-aware. And so I'm just thinking for the listeners who are still feeling all of that trigger, like I would say we've been working at this for a long time and still sometimes cannot show up with love, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
I take a breath, take another breath and another breath and another breath before responding. That's the thing for me. Like it's about a daily practice of loving myself. And then, so I have like a reservoir, I have a bank, right? So there's enough love within me that I have more tolerance. When I'm not loving myself, my rope with other people gets really short. Right. So when I love myself, I have a really long rope. So people can be human. And I'm like, oh, look at them just being human. Right. But then the minute that I don't love myself enough, it's like, ooh, you did this one little thing. And I'm, and I just notice what arises in me. Right. Like if I'm disappointed by something, I don't get something. And I stop for a second and I breathe. And I ask that question that Susan posited before, what would love do in this moment? Like, what is the experience for the other person? I could be disappointed right now, but instead I come back with compassion. Oh, yeah, right? You probably couldn't do this thing because you had all these other things going on today, right? That must have felt like a lot of pressure. And then, right? Same thing, right? There's a place for us to connect there.
Beautiful.
And it brings to mind, go ahead.
Well, I just like what you said about the filling yourself up. So you had a reservoir. You have a reservoir, like the practice of loving ourselves daily, waking up and having a new conversation every day than just letting that mind run, that we consciously, intentionally bring forth the conversation we want to be having, right? Loving ourselves, and, it's beautiful. And I'm grateful for this day. And Colette, I'm so glad I'm here with you and you're here with me, and we're going to take care of each other, and let's do this day. And how can we show, like, really cultivating our love? And you are beautiful and you're worthy, and you are like, I am growing it. So creating a practice, so
'Cause
important, right?
whatever my reactivity would have been in that moment would have been about a story that I was telling about what was happening, and not love. Like, love has no story.
Right.
So I have to recognize the story is about my own trigger from the past. So that's the moment, right? Step in, remind that little girl she's okay and that she's loved, right? If I need to, whatever that is, and step back into the loving presence and awareness for the other person.
That's lovely. That's really lovely in that moment, because perception is reality. And so what we're perceiving in the moment could be perceived as an attack
Perception.
from the other. It's a perception of it. But it's only exactly what you said, Christina. It's a perception. If any trigger comes up, which I always say, if I'm in a wound, or I'm taking it, if I take it personal, I'm in a wound. Anytime I'm in a perceived attack right here. Somebody's coming at me. And if we're full of love and someone's just being human and they've had the bad day, and what's up for the other?
Yeah. And a really lovely question that you made me think of, Christina, is like when you said, like, it's something from my past, is where have I felt this before?
Totally.
Right? Where have I felt this before? I see it's coming out of your mouth, but I've felt this before. And so that makes me a common denominator to the situation, right? It's like, oh, if that's true, what I've learned is I can shift it. Now I have some awareness, and I can find some resource to change.
Yeah. And one of the things that the three of us talked about earlier was that moment of discomfort signals a choice point. Signals the choice point between choosing love or stepping into the old program.
Yes.
So thank you for the opportunity to create a new neural pathway, a new action, to keep stepping into love, to keep increasing my bandwidth here. So discomfort is not bad. Discomfort is a choice point to help you pull out of the old programming.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
And
that brings me up to that brings up the experience in the moment to step, whatever it is. And I think lots of people are going through lots of different stuff right now. Lots of emotions are coming up. It could be anger. Of course, there's a lot of pressures that are coming in for individuals. That maybe the monetary amount isn't coming in. They got to support their families, right? They're not working as much. So many different things, which would be easy to go into the old programming and be in the discomfort or the uncomfortable experience of the wounds that are arising in the present moment. And it is difficult in the moment to decide to choose, sometimes, to be in that state, to choose love, as we all know.
Would you like to share a little bit about your experience earlier this week? It's up to you if you want to, because I think it was really exemplified exactly what we're talking about here, Susan.
Yeah, when you guys were speaking, I thought, okay, when I say they, by the way, to the people that are on, insight comes in this part of my brain, and so they said it's to share. So this week, what Christina was just saying about whether one decides to stay in the old self or move into the more higher expanded self. Last Wednesday, we were getting ready for the preparatory aspect of this call. And I was having an extremely difficult day emotionally. I was crying all day and it would not go. It was really deep. And so my normal pattern, whenever I'm in pain, I go in. I put the covers on, or I go into my cave, and I never let people see, and then I'll come back out. When I'm feeling better, then I might talk about it. But I knew this was really hard, and I had the call scheduled at 6:30 that night with Christina and Colette, and I was going to text them and say, I can't make it, I'm going through some stuff. I decided to show up different. And I know these two love me deeply, and I was so scared to do that. I have to say to the individuals here that are on the call, and to you guys know I've said this to you, that was so stepping outside of my comfort zone. So get on the call, and I vulnerability. I had to be vulnerable in that moment, and they just held space, and I swear I had a breakthrough. It was so, but the wound met me at the present moment. And I lost it on the call, as these two can attest to, completely sobbing and feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm taking up space. And you know, Colette was sharing her experience, and then she saw that I was distressed, and then she shifted towards me. In that moment, I felt, oh my God, I'm distracting. It's her importance. I'm not worthy to be here, and I'm taking up this space. Wounded self, little girl self.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys just held space and helped me to work through it. And I swear there was a shift in that moment, because I did, back when I got on the call, I chose love
Mm-hmm.
for self,
Mm-hmm.
and not staying in the wounded experience and thinking I'm not worthy. And in essence, I claimed my own worth by allowing these two beautiful souls to be there with me and to hold the space to show how much I am loved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was
Wow.
deeply profound. You guys know that, deeply profound. It shifted a core. I swear something inside me completely shifted
Mm-hmm.
because of that experience, that I did that.
Mhm.
And what that's going to show up in my potentiality, I don't know yet. And, you know, I'm getting some aspects of it. I see things differently. So obviously it's shifted already, but there's much more. What impact that's going to have on the trajectory of my experience, I don't know yet.
Well, love is transformative.
Mhm.
And I got to say, I'll speak for myself.
Ooh.
In that moment, I also experienced such love and jubilation in being able to hold that loving space for you. I could see that moment where that little girl was just like, no, don't look at me. Like, I'm going to go off in the corner somewhere and cry and feel bad about myself. Right. Like, and I'm just going to be there until the feeling goes away. And then I'll come back and pretend it didn't happen, or block myself off to love even more. And in that moment, you said, no, I'm going to allow these women to love me. Like, I'm going to love me enough to let them love me in this space. And
Yes.
that there was just what happened for myself. I'm sure all of us,
Mhm.
Colette,
Yeah.
what for
Yeah,
all of us, it
absolutely.
was just like, it was a synergy.
Mhm.
It was a rising.
Yeah.
And and so I thank you so much, because that is what shifts everything for us, is that moment, right? You stepped out of an old pattern in that moment, Susan. That was so
Yes.
important. And it's so difficult sometimes. We're in that place to choose the other thing, because, you know, all of our conditioning and our patterns and our ego is saying, don't do it, don't do it. It's not safe. Right? What if they let me down again? Just like when? Like, what if it's not there? What if I'm a fool?
Yeah.
And look what
Yeah.
happened when you risked.
I know.
You risked. And just what
know.
you said at the beginning, it's vulnerability, and you showed up, and boy, that we just dropped right to our hearts. Hey, just like I was just was like, whoa. It's like, yeah, that was amazing. It was amazing. And I agree, Christina, for us, it was a beautiful honoring, right?
And having the two goddesses of love right here, the two really, how lucky, the two goddesses of love that I know in my experience. Oh my gosh, I couldn't have been in a more safer place for me. And there was a tether, there was a fight. There really was a fight of the wounded self and the present self for a bit there. I could viscerally feel it on the body. And I like it was like going through a fire of hell for probably about 2 minutes or so. And you guys just held space. That was so important.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I recognize that. So for everybody on the call, whatever they're experiencing, if it's breaking through old patterns, and sometimes we think we can't withstand it, we're not going to get through it. And that's what I felt for that period, and even leading up to the call. But I decided to lean in anyway, even though the egoic or the conditioned part of myself said, I'm going to get let down. It's never going to work. It's going to play out this way. I leaned in anyway. And of course, it proved in spades that love is real, that I'm not alone, and I'm not freaking alone in this world, and the universe is working for me through the earth angels that are in my experience. And earth angels are everywhere. We're all earth angels for each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you again. As you guys know, deepest gratitude.
Yeah.
Well, and such a thank you to you, because that is the ultimate risk, right? And it really does show how we think we're going through this life looking all good. And, like you say, right, I'll go over here and I'll handle it here and then I'll come back. Okay. Yeah. And I definitely do that also. Yeah. But that you removed a block to love.
Yeah, that's it. I know. I might start to cry here, you guys, just so you know, because it is right there. It is, and it shifted with your gut. And you said something that night, Christina, and if I don't know if I'm going to capture the exact wording, but you both said, and I think you also said it, Colette, but by you both showing up to hold the container, the expansion of love that you felt, that it wasn't a burden, which I felt I was burdening you to. I really did. I felt, oh my God, but that's the wounded little girl taking up space, and oh my God, no one's going to be there. I'm all on my own. And I'm called what's attachment avoidant. If you looked up different attachment, that is so vulnerable to show up and just allow for truth to reveal itself in that moment. Oh my God, it was love. It was, and actually what happened is something broke in that moment. After crying all day, there was a big release of the energies after that. I felt so much better after.
So cool.
Yeah. And so for everybody on the call.
And I remember us talking about that, right? Because it really was a shift for everyone. What you did for you did it for us, and now everyone beyond us gets impacted by that.
Yes.
Energetically.
We are all one. Like at the end of the day, we're all one. That love that we experience, like we all experience that. And I think so many of us, I myself included, I know I've definitely been in a place of like, oh, I don't want to put you out, or I don't want to burden you with what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a real trap, I think, in terms of our bandwidth of love. And, there are times when I have to risk saying exactly what it is that I need and risk that the other person might not be there, because not everyone's perfect.
Yeah.
Right. I think in many ways, you're right. You had a pretty safe incubator to show up in with Colette and I that day. Right.
How lucky am I?
Right. And
that
I
was
think
perfect.
Why a lot of people go to therapy and to healers. When I talk to clients, I mean, if you ask me what I really do, I just love people. That's all. That's what I get. That's what I get to do. And it moves me. Like it. I'm so grateful for that opportunity, and that's what transforms people.
It is love.
You love someone exactly how they are, and it shifts everything, and it fills me up too, to be in that experience. And so, I sometimes have to risk, knowing that maybe the other person might not catch me, but I can always catch myself. Right? Because otherwise, if I'm always going to the self-protection place, I don't want to reach out, I don't want to burden, then I keep this bandwidth so low, right? That even if I get hurt from this experience, I'll be okay. That's resilience. And the next person or myself, right? Yeah.
And anytime that we can be a mirror of love to another, especially as healers, it's a natural. I believe if you ask me, there's probably 12 personality types in all things, or archetypes that we are in the world. Some are healers, some are builders. We're healers. We're the expression of that. And anytime that we can show with the people that we work with what it means, it's a safe container of love. And you both of you are amazing, amazing.
Right.
And that is what's going to shift the world. And it's not going to be, it's going to be love. It's each of us showing up with self-love. And when we show up with self-love, we then extend it to the other.
Yeah. Because that's what changes the brain. That's what changes the template, is the experience of love. And so, whether people come to see me or somebody else, or you're able to hold a space for a friend or whatever that is, they need that, right? We don't have it. A lot of us don't have templates. We haven't grown up with that. And so what I really explain is that the therapeutic relationship that I create with a client allows their brain to say, oh, wait a second, there's a safe person here who's holding love and space for me, no matter how I'm showing up, snot running down my face, maybe I'm angry. It's okay. Love is still there. And we need to be offering that to people at every moment. And I think this in some ways ties in, Jezebel asked a question. Can you speak more about the holding the place you talk about when you're confronted by someone who is anger lashing out? Is this dropping into your heart and breath and respond from love to be compassionate? I think it's a matter of seeing there's a wounded person in front of me right now. And this means nothing about me. And so I often have to ground myself first, right? To do that. Take that breath. This is not about me. And how difficult it must be to be that person right now. I know that can be a stretch sometimes, believe me. Right? And I can set a boundary, but wow, like life must be really difficult if this is the only way that you can express yourself is this way. Wow, what must life be like for you? And if I can change my paradigm, my perspective, even just ever so slightly, I find that very helpful. I had another experience of that this week where I was in the supermarket and I could see outside the window. There was, I don't know why I was in like the produce section. I could see out the front window and I'd walked in and totally not seen. But there was a man and a young boy outside with a sign asking for money for rent and for food. And I mean, I was called to look and I just saw rent and food. And I saw this man and this young boy out there. And I started crying in the produce section, barely grabbed anything and just ran straight to the checkout to buy them a gift card. And because one thing, there was a paradigm shift. I grew up in Vancouver, and not unlike downtown Prince George, sometimes lots of people asking for money. And, a lot of times like just, head straight forward, pretend you don't see them, I don't have any money. And years ago, someone said to me, do you ever have an idea of how humbling it is to stand and ask a stranger for money? And in that moment, that's what I saw. I didn't see somebody who was trying to get from me. I saw somebody who was at their most vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. I did a paradigm shift into what love, and in that moment, all I wanted was to express love, right? And I just, I offered that and I went back to the car and I just sat there and I sobbed because I knew that was me. What I just gave to them, I gave to myself. Mm-hmm.
So profound. And that's what I'm learning too, is what you extend to another, you accept in self. We're all really are one. It's just different in individuation expressions, the illusion of individuals. Mm-hmm. So when you extend love to another, you're really accepting it in self. And then it's going to play out in the journey along the way. We have no idea how it's going to reverberate back to us, but it does. It cannot help but that, because there is a resonance match between you and the expression of it. You're really extending out to self. We don't even realize it. Mm-hmm. When you recognize the need of another. Yeah. That's love.
And that is true. We don't see it, right? But you got it. That's amazing.
I know. I felt love pulling me. Like I felt love pulling me. Like I had groceries to get that I was like, I actually don't need any of that. That's all extra stuff that I actually don't. I no longer have a need for any of this stuff right now. The only thing I'm called to do is this one thing.
Yeah.
And further, Jasmine, to your question, if I choose to be love in a moment in which someone is angry, it doesn't mean I'm a doormat. It doesn't mean that I allow it. Mm-hmm. It means I say, oh, you're really hurting right now. And if they can't drop into that place, then I set a boundary. I really want to be here to listen to what you have to say, right? Like, it sounds like you're struggling right now. Let me know when you have time. Like, let me know when you're at a better place. Or can I do something to support you to be in a better place? Because I can't have this conversation from here. I can't have this because it doesn't feel safe enough for me right now. I want to just sit here and love you. And it's really hard for me to love you when you're being prickly, essentially. It's like you're asking me to like be kind and you're showing me your thorns, So it's like I step into that place.
And the other question often, what do you need right now? What do you need? Asking them the question, what do they need right now? And when we're in arrested development, because we've all been there, and arrested development is, to me, when an old wound is coming to meet you in the present moment. My go-to is anger. You talk to my kid and my ex, they would attest to that. I can get to anger easily. And it is the wounded place in the other. that is showing up for that person in the present moment. We can choose to take it personal. And if it does show up personally for us, it's something within us that needs clearing and processing. And then otherwise, when we can just be a container of love for the other and say, you must really be hurting right now, is what you said, Christina. What do you need? What you need right now in a calm, loving voice. It's hard when, if a trigger comes up for us, if we go to arrested development along with the other, we've all been there. We know how well that goes.
And really, it's tending to the boundary that you're talking about, right? That you're creating a boundary when there is someone that can't go there, that is just, you really, it is that self-loving piece to take care of yourself, right? Move your body away if you need to, or express, yep, this is what I'm going to do for me. Because there are some certainly excluding situations where the people are very violent, right?
For sure.
Knowing that for sure. We're probably not speaking directly to that, but if we are speaking to that, oh, right, I love myself enough. And again, I just gotta say, ask your angels for help, right? Help me. All right, this is what's coming up. I'm just calling them in. Let come on in, help me. I'm asking for help. I'm Archangel Michael, watch over me. What do I need to say? What, just like with that little simple call in is going to thoughts are going to start popping in your mind, and you will be safe. You will be protected. I truly believe it.
I love that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's a reminder. And we don't come in the world without our guardians and our angels. It's whether we can perceive it or not, they're there. There's so much things that are occurring, and they really are all around us. So thank you for that reminder.
They are, and they do require us to ask, and I will say it again, that is the trigger. You ask and you receive, ask and you receive. The asking, can we love ourselves enough to ask? That is a self-love thing. And shifting from the religion to love was a profound shift for me, right? To be able to, because when I shift to love, which for me was that introduction of my angels, and I always knew I had guardian angels, but they were still in the world of religion. So now it's just expansive beyond that now. But as I shift to that kind of love that is incredibly unconditional, adoring, like always the cheerleader, always standing behind us, always comforting us, always just a holding space for us all the time. And knowing that has made it so much easier for me to love myself, to know that's available, that's really happening in real time, no matter, like, they do not see mistakes. And there are no mistakes in truth, but sometimes I think there are. Right? And they do not see it. And so now I can have more space for myself to give myself a break, right? Give myself a break.
I love what you just said. You said there are no mistakes. And I want to get clear that so everybody on the call, there are no mistakes. And then you just said, Colette, sometimes I think there are. Yeah. The thinking isn't real. There are no mistakes. They're not, everything, all roads lead to Rome. Now, some roads to Rome are going to go faster because if you start there, we're all going there. It doesn't matter. We're all going there, and everything is learning. Everything is learning. It's contrast and experience going up against, and so everybody, it is all learning. That's it.
I was on a phone call with my sister today, and we were discussing several things, but Abraham came up, right? And that we've all heard it, right? You can't get it wrong, and you'll never get it done, right? Abraham says that a lot. And how comforting is that, right? I can't get it wrong, and I always get another chance, and I always get another, like you said, Christina, choice point, another choice point, another choice point. And there will always be another fork in the road, and we can shift at every given moment. But if I'm pulling the past back with me, like, we have to start fresh.
Yes. Right? Relationships are really about supporting me to be the best version of myself and supporting you to be the best version of yourself. And if we come back to that example from earlier, if I am in a situation where I have a partner who is angry, the highest version of myself is to do the different thing, shift out of my usual response. And I would imagine that that person probably has never had, the guidance and the parenting to have been told at a young age, here's how you ask for what you want. Here's how you receive what it is that you need in this moment. And so they've adopted these behaviors of getting angry to try to get what it is that they're needing. And so in that moment, if you can be a high expression of love, it is not your job to reparent them, but you definitely can, by being a loving person, help them to grow. Someone just said, like a loving parent, exactly, right? In that moment, right? Because you're now standing and saying, I'm not going to do the same thing that I've always done. I'm not going to do the thing that your parents did. I'm going to do something different here. And I'm going to tell you, hey, there's another way you can do this. And I'm going to hold this loving space for you to make another choice.
Yeah.
Lovely.
I love that. And that we really can say, like, you need to speak in a way that people can hear you, right? And so I can't hear you. I can't. It's hard to receive your message when you're yelling at me. I just want to move away. Do you have something you need to share with me? Because I need to hear it in a way that I can hear it. Yeah,
it's got to feel safe.
That would be really helpful for me. Yeah. And I remember really lots of big moments, and this is particularly with my partner in our relationship, because as those communications, because of my past, right, and how my parents love them, the way the operation was, though, right, when my dad raised his voice, I had to get small. So when my partner would raise his voice or get bigger in stance, like, you're trying to make a point, I would just be like, whoa, right? And I would immediately defer my authority at the beginning of our marriage, right? I didn't even know what was happening. I didn't even understand, right? So it took time to understand that, wait, he's not even aware. He wasn't even aware. As a matter of fact, I would say, well, what, like that look on your face and the way, I'm not doing that. Like, we're not aware. When we're in a feeling, stuff's coming up and we don't always know what we look like, what we sound like, how it's coming across, right? So
but it's all perception. So don't you think it's all perception? So how you perceived it in that moment had to do with your wound or your experience of the past. And that's the learning opportunity for each of us when we can stay conscious or present in awareness.
Yes.
With what's unfolding in that moment. And what Christina said earlier, being able to observe beyond that which appears and not getting caught in the storyline.
Yeah.
Because the important piece I'm learning is the emotional charge that's coming up in the moment behind the storyline within our field, because that's always a repeat.
Nice. Yes, that's true.
That's a repeat, and the universe, it's a setup, right? It's a setup, and upset, it's a setup for us to transmute a lower vibration emotion, to heal it, to become whole within, to move towards the highest expression of love for each of us in that moment. And it really takes the awareness of the present moment to recognize that opportunity. When we're in the wound, we cannot, because we're back in arrested development, which the feeling we would have had when it first got originated, and it's held within the cellular memory of the body. And it takes, and what Christina said, as we come back to the breath, you can put your hand on your chest in those moments, or wherever you're feeling the expression on the body, how it's expressing. It could be a tightness in the chest or the solar plexus. And then in that moment, we get to reparent our own little child self and say, I got you. Okay, I know you're feeling scared. What you said, your dad used to be an authority figure, and you would go small. And to take on the expression of how to move that forward for the callers. In that moment when that arose and you would have went to go small, you grab your hand, your adult self, and breathe. I got you. I know you're scared right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, Dad used to do that. Okay, and you just breathe into the moment, and you'll notice it subsides within in that moment, and then it brings us out of the arrested development of the wound into the present moment, so we can be the adult in authority with sovereignty of power and authority to do the highest vibration thing in the moment.
Yeah.
So Susan makes it sounds really simple.
I know, right? Oh, it was just feeling so calm and wonderful as I was listening to you.
I know. And
You
I
could
just
just stand in front of
Yeah.
everyone.
want
Yeah.
everyone to know, you know, whether some of the stuff that I've talked about or Susan's talked about, Colette's talked about, you know, I'll speak for myself. This has been years and years of practice, and I miss opportunities to love myself all the time.
Mhm.
It is
Absolutely.
consistent, like it's a continuous, okay, how do I love myself? How do I love myself? What did I miss? Like it's just, and not from beating oneself up. It's just that I know that anytime that I have an upset within me, it's just a call for more love, right? And often, so if you're on this path, you might notice, oh man, I missed it back there. Now's the opportunity, right? So that's usually how change happens, right? We usually go through old patterns and then realize it later on. So love yourself then, because what's going to happen is that you're going to start to gain awareness like sooner and sooner and sooner and sooner and sooner, to the point where just that you start to get that feeling arise and you're able to do it right away.
Absolutely. And I don't think, I think I've said this in our calls before, it doesn't matter to the universe when you get it. It doesn't matter if it's in the moment, and then, or for example, with my, I think I've used this in the other calls where I've went into arrested development with Alexander, my beautiful son. Many, many, many times I have completely lost it, unglued, anger, yelling at the top of my lungs. And then I catch myself after. There I was in arrested development. Then I go back and redress. Say, you know what, that was my, and I do, we do, he and I do have names for my subpersonalities. There's Bitchy Bertha, and there's different names, so he recognizes them. And we also have hand signals that he starts to pre-warn me, because he can recognize on my body language when these subpersonalities are starting to rise. I don't recognize it right away. The observer can recognize it. And so he'll say, Mom, or, you know, the signs that we use. And then I realize, okay, oh, it's happening in that moment. Times that I have lost, I go back and said I was in my wounded self, right? It was Susan with a Z. That's my real mean one. Susan with a Z came up, and I didn't handle that well. I was really, really not in a good place. And then I just redress it in the moment.
And can I just ask, have you created, the two of you, it sounds like you've created a conversation and given him a key to give you a signal.
Yes,
How
absolutely.
Powerful. Oh
yes.
My goodness, that's just beautiful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's safe, you
He
give me a
recognizes
signal
it.
and I'm gonna, oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow, Susan.
Yeah, it is.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and oh, don't get me wrong, what Christina said, oh, you guys, this is just all the journey for all the people on the call. This, you know, what Christina just said, yeah, I made it sound easy. And I can say this right now because I'm in a beautiful space with all the energy of all the beautiful colors. And it is the expression of truth in this moment. Come on over when I'm in my arrested development. You're not going to even recognize me. It's true. It's true. And see, I just love yourself anyway. That's all I have to say. Love yourself anyway, because guess what? We all have shadow parts.
Yeah.
We all have shadows expression of self. They're just as lovable as the angelic parts.
Especially when we can get to a place of understanding why they're there in the first place.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And thank you, Susan, for sharing that. And being just so honest with that, because that's the truth for all of us. We all experience all the emotions.
Yeah.
Right. And how do we get through them? And giving our keys away to people is a real gift. Right.
Yes, absolutely.
So we have just one of the participants was just adding that when the trigger happens, the behavior we most want to exhibit is usually what was done to us. We tend to respond, you know, in the way that we were responded to. It's a
Mhm.
part of that learned behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go up against that all the
That's
time.
so true.
Up against it all the time. It's all, in my upbringing, it was only anger. Anger was everything. That's all we saw. So that's my natural go-to. And
Yeah.
there was no definition. I did not have a dictionary for expression other than anger. That's what I saw.
Right.
And so there was no other dictionary, or like I say to my son, I talk about the tool belt of life. And so I want him to have all the tools, so when he's ready to go, he can pull it out. And it includes having an emotional dictionary.
Yeah.
And
Right.
anger is a part of that, but a good, healthy way of expression, not to ever in hurting another, if you can avoid.
Right. Not as in anger as the only expression for many emotions. And I think the thing that often happens though is when we replicate this behavior that we didn't like receiving, we often go into shame.
Yes.
Right. We often go into beating ourselves up, and that's the opportunity for love and compassion.
Mhm.
So the minute that I go into shame, that I'm disconnected from myself, and I'm disconnected from the other person. So the more love and compassion I can offer myself. Oh yeah. Right.
Boy, that's big. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, that's beautiful. And really knowing that is my signal to love myself more. Oh, having that feeling, that's my moment. That's my choice point.
Yes.
This is my point of practice.
Yeah.
Right. And it will come up, and will come up, and it will come up. And the more we practice, right, we're available for ourselves, the easier it's going to get.
I love that. I love what you just said, Colette, there. Thank you.
Love is a practice, right? That's what and I think that's really important for all of us to think about. Like there's, you know, for me, there is love in every moment, and it's whether I choose to lean into that, right? I could always choose more love, right? For myself and for other, always, always, always. And, you know, we're, as human beings on this 3D plane, we've also inherited a brain that is more hardwired for self-protection and self-preservation than it is for connection. So if you struggle with those, with often feeling those barriers to love, or going into fear of, you know, being rejected or abandoned or hurt or, you know, taken over or controlled, or whatever those fears are, know that that is what your brain's hardwiring was set up for, just as a human. But you are no longer, like, this is a person here who's upset, or a child who's upset because there's no straw in their juice box and they don't know how to fix that other than have a meltdown, right? You ever give a child a juice box with a straw? Watch mayhem, right? Mayhem ensues.
I'm going to remember that the next time I have a meltdown, if I can't get,
Or margarita.
Exactly.
Give an adult a margarita without a straw.
I can't get the wine bottle. I can't get the cork to work.
You don't have a corkscrew for the wine bottle. Exactly, right?
Adult analogy. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so know that, you know, as a response, you just want to say, like, get over yourself, right? Or get away. Like, I don't want this energy around me. We want, that's our brain. And we have to override that. And we can override that with the breath in the present moment. We come back to the conscious brain where we have the choice point. The choice point is always in the present moment. It's never going to be running the old program. You run the old program, you always do what you always done. You always get what you always got.
Yeah. Huge.
That's where love is.
You said, and throughout the call, one thing I just wanted to touch on about unconditional. We talked about love. We're all raised by behaviorists. It was all, you do this and I'll love you. You don't do this, it's withheld. So when we go to the self-love experience, to move into the unconditionality of love, that we love ourselves regardless of how we show up. And to break away from the judgment of self, because that is so ingrained based on our conditioning, that we hold judgment when we don't do what society says we should do, or what parents say we should do, or the other says we should do. And just to be, by the mere fact that you exist, you're love. You're lovable. Doesn't matter how you've expressed it in the moment. And also to look at the egoic thought. that you would only an ego would show up, like in a hurt or an arrested development. When I go into anger, that deep anger, because that is something of a need not being met for whatever that shows up. And only an ego would do that because, of course, that's what it was conditioned to do. Behind the ego was the love. And so the spirit of self would only hold the ego in the biggest of hug and say, oh my gosh, I see how you would do that based on your family of origin and all the things that you went through. I could totally see how you would show up that way. Let me love you.
Yep. More love, not less, right? More love, not less, right? There's no like, oh, I'm going to beat myself up for doing this one thing. No, right? There's no, it doesn't work that way, right? Always more love and not less.
And it really is practice, 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 because as you're talking and I'm remembering a lot of those feelings, that shame or the beating myself up or the, right? I can really recognize now that was way worse 10 years ago, way worse. And then still it's gotten better. It really has gotten better over time, but it has taken practice and awareness.
And what I know, we're slowly going to wrap up here, but I think the last few things that I just want to say for myself, and then each of you ladies can add what you want to say before we wrap up, is that I choose to continually risk my heart to step into my vulnerability, to love even in the face of what one might choose not to love, because it increases my bandwidth all the time. Right. And yeah, sometimes does that mean that I experience deep pain? Because, or like, I think about when my dog transitioned or passed away, like how much grief I felt. That was commensurate with the amount that I was willing to love. And in those moments, when we feel that amount of pain, a relationship and something like that, we have the choice to close up our heart, or we have the opportunity to say, here, this is excavating my heart for even more love.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah. Thank you.
Do you want to add something to that? What you want people to know? Anything you want to say about love before we wrap up?
Really, really, truly that it is always available to us. And I really do believe that it is in dropping our resistance or blocks to love. And as we become willing to love ourselves in those dark spots, we are going to be able to risk and be more vulnerable with other people, like Susan was with us, to really trust that she could go forward and we can go forward, and that maybe we will receive love, right, in our vulnerable places. And that's going to be a mirror of how much we've loved ourselves, right? And there are moments for all of us and for many people in the world where people are just, what a gift, right? When people are just at their rock bottom and they don't feel that someone can still show up for them. And there always is another angel to show up. Guaranteed, there always is, right?
Thank you.
Look for it. Be aware.
Thank you, Colette. Hopefully. And from my perspective, I just know that love is who we are. And everyone out there individually, you are love. You're never separate from it. It's your divine birthright. It is your expression. And as we've said, you must choose it. It is choosing it in every moment to whether you are going to be love or you're going to be your conditioned personality, egoic self. And when I say the conditioning is linked to the wounded self, that's linked. That's all the things we've been taught and shown. And then to step in and envelop the conditioned wounded self with the divine aspect of self, the divine love of who you are, that it doesn't ever leave you. You came in as it, you will leave as it. It doesn't matter how you showed up. All of you is that. And not to ever forget that, and ever in doubt to know that is the truth of who you are. End of story for all of us. And then we have the earth angels, the ones we perceive as the good or the ones we perceive as the bad. They're all there to bring us so we can bring ourselves home, to the divineness, the divine love of who we are.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Thank you,
This was
Susan.
been such a lovely
Oh, I loved it. Yes.
conversation tonight. Like I just feel like I swam in love for the last hour and a half. And thank you to and thank you to everyone who joined us, on this call tonight for your
Yes.
lovely questions and for the things that you added to it. Like this is just so lovely. We're raising the vibration of love here, all of us together. And so thank you.
Yes.
And so we're gonna be back soon, probably sometime in July. We're figuring that out.
That's what we do.
Guide us, and just check your email because we'll send you one of those. And
Yeah.
And thank you to everybody who came on the call. Because again, everyone that shows up, I want to just express that it adds to the energy. It adds to the collective of the expression of what unfolds during the calls. Amazing. I got lots today. Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I felt the love. I'm bathing in love.
Yes. I can see some of these beautiful people, Crystal and John and Tammy and all the people making comments. Thank you so much. Thank you for showing up and for contributing. It's beautiful. It's a pleasure. Christina, thank you for having us again.
Thank you, Christina, as always. We love you.
Yes, we love you.
Okay.
Okay. Good
Bye,
night,
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
See you.